You own the assets, you own the brand, you own the company. You should own all of these things. It doesn't matter who's responsible, but it is your responsibility as the owner to know.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I'm your host, Nick Olsen. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Paige, when you're looking at a typical, lower middle market kind of company, one that's, 5 million, 150 million in revenue, what are some of the most common digital assets you find that owners, I guess their companies have, but, and secondarily, like that are overlooked, when you're looking at a deal and how to transfer those, we'll get into that a bit more, but, what are some common just digital assets that our listeners should know about?
Yeah. A lot of common digital assets that they're looking at are going to come down to domain name is an obvious one. I think it's one that people think of right away, but it's also the first one where we tell clients hey, don't forget to renew that. And they're like, oh yeah, no, we've got this. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it, until it's not. And then, it's not so much that they did or didn't own it. Sometimes it's what card is on file. Has it been flagged for fraud? And so it's, being taken by the provider, or whose email address is it that got it set up. So there's those pieces like that it comes to the domain name, but it goes on even further for who actually owns your Google ad account. So you've been running ads for a while. You have a very successful company based off of a Google ad campaign for marketing. And then you find out that the vendor's the one who set it up and they're the ones who own it. And so, yes, you can get ready to go to market and sell that company, but is that something now that has to be carried over with the vendor when it's acquired in order to get the same results? Or is it going to be something that, hey, yeah, we've been getting these results, but you can't take it with you because you're going to end the contract and use an in-house person. And so now they have to reset these ads that were getting that success. Those sorts of things can start to really change what that valuation looks like, or how a buyer's going into that deal to go, wait a minute, if we can't duplicate the same process of what you have going on now, or if we're tied to a vendor to make that happen. We've seen it with websites where, yes, the company thinks they own the website, but then they get ready and start talking to the vendor and they're like, oh no, that's on a monthly payment plan with us. And if you, stop the service, you lose everything. That's not how a buyer wants to start a deal. I know we had one that was getting into purchasing digital assets. So it was an asset acquirer. And I was looking at everything and I was like, you do realize that their website is on a non-supported third-party platform and you're buying basically the blog, the content behind it, right? And he's like, yeah, I think I could figure it out. And I was like, but if you hate this program for any reason, you literally just lost the entire asset that you purchased as far as having a blog and all of the content that comes with it. So it's really understanding, what do the contracts state? Who owns it? Is it a vendor? Is it under an employee's email address they may still be with the company, but what happens when they exit if you don't catch that stuff now?
Right. Yeah. You definitely want to figure that out as early in the process as possible to give yourself a chance to remedy the wrongs right there. I mentioned in the intro, you've built a proprietary digital asset management services component of your firm, tracking hundreds of data points. If you were advising someone who's helping a business owner sell their company, like an M&A advisor, what are maybe the top 5 to 10 things? Maybe you create your own checklist of things that I want to make sure I ask my client about to see if they know about it, or if we have to do some more digging into whether they do own it or not, or what the status of it is. And what are those things that we want to make sure are top of mind when we're looking at those digital assets?
Yeah, first would be just looking at, do you know the passwords, and see how long it takes for them to answer the question, right? If they hum and haw, if they're like, oh, I know it's someplace, or yeah, I think my developer sent it to me, it's in an email, or whatever that looks like, it's a huge flag that we need to start getting ahead of something. Second would just be starting to ask, who set up Facebook? Where is Facebook? Do you have access to that? Do you have access to Google Analytics? And anytime that they're just like, what is that? Why do I need that? What's going on? It's Probably a good indicator that they don't know who owns it, they don't know where it's at, and it's going to take some hunting. And we see that digital assets really start to come up kind of at the very last part of the deal right now. So you've gone through the hard part, sure, you've gone through the legal, you've gone through the finances, you've gone through all these pieces, even some IT infrastructure, and then they start asking questions about, can you prove the ROI, can we see how kind of the stack of the back end of the website and how it's built and what it's using or what we're inheriting? Can we see any of the Facebook insights? And you start and like hesitating at all, it's gonna start to delay the deal. It could be the thing that makes them go, you know what, we already had a few doubts. That's the final straw for us. We're this is no longer interested. Or why are you paying this much money in marketing and nothing's returning? Like you didn't think to stop sooner and get a grasp of that before taking the business to market. Definitely looking at how aware is the business owner of these details, or how much are they actually dependent on, I know it, but let me go find it. Let me go ask somebody. Let me go someplace else. Because that's where we start to see this is going to be a much bigger hurdle to gather all of this information when it comes time and starts to get asked. And we've seen it impact too many deals in a negative way.
So if your client's asking those questions, saying, I got to find out, I don't know, like what are you seeing happens from there, whether it's from the client or when they talk to someone like yourself, or what happens when they start, like what do they have to go through and do to make sure that they answer it? And what are some common trends that you see that like, oh, I wouldn't do that, or you shouldn't have done that, or maybe some pitfalls that some business owners take when they don't know about their digital assets?
I'd say oh, I don't know about that, we're not going to do that, would probably be more like, hey, we'll deal with it when it comes up. It is always going to come up. It is going to be an issue, and it's going to be 10 times harder to fix, if not more expensive to fix when it happens. So definitely, kind of the hoping and waiting and hope doesn't come up question is a really, really bad approach to take. I think the other is, it's not talked about a whole lot. The digital side of all of this and the acquisition process and digital due diligence is still new. It isn't something that a lot of people are diving deep into. So I think the thing that we hear often is, oh, we already have a checklist. Don't worry about it. Or, oh, yeah, they went through the checklist. But as I said, we've identified that there's over 300 different data points that go into that digital due diligence. And so while, yes, they probably have the core pieces, they don't have the things that are really what are burning and crashing deals. They have, this is sufficient enough. I think it'll work. I think it'll be fine. And so that's where, when we get in there, we dive in through and start asking all sorts of questions. And it comes into 7 different pillars where you've got your domain and website and email addresses, but emails can even just be, hey, you've been using bob@domain.com for the past 40 years. What's going to happen when you sell that? And every contact that you've ever made only knows that that's your email address. They don't have a personal. We start to see a lot of owners start going, ooh, I don't feel comfortable with that. But that needs to go with the transaction. So we even need to start having those conversations earlier on and saying, how do we start branching this out now? Or how do you want to put stuff into this deal that makes sure that you're still able to kind of see some of the personal ones, or what does this look like? Because that is an asset that is going to go in a transfer. And then you've also moving into more of what's going on with the website and the marketing efforts and the social platforms, into what are going on with the KPIs and the analytics and everything there. Then we look at brand assets. Did you get your logo designed on Fiverr? You probably don't actually own the logo file that's needed to be able to transfer that full brand across. Or did you even get brand standards? So if they're looking at this to kind of buy a brand, if you will, do you actually own everything that goes along with having that brand? Then we move into third party tools, which are going to be CRMs. It's going to be your payment processors. It's going to be your plugins that you're using on your website. Do you own the license key, or does a vendor? Because if you don't know that that's an expense that's coming out and a vendor's been paying for it, what happens when all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're no longer going to cover that front? And we see that happen far too often when web developers change hands.
What is a license key?
A license key is going to be, so it can be in any different type of third party kind of plugin that you're using. It doesn't matter if it's on, Shopify or WordPress or whatever that looks like. But what is the license key that's actually supporting that functionality happening on your website. And everything from builders to form builders to e-commerce to memberships, all of them are starting to come with a recurring license fee. One, it's just so that they can keep the code up to date, so it's not a bad thing, but that's also what's keeping your site functioning. So if you've built this infrastructure, how do we make sure that that is successfully getting transferred through the deal?
When you're looking at, you mentioned just the transition and all the things. Um, whose, in your opinion, whose problem is that? Is that the seller's issue or problem, or is it the buyer attaining the company, or a little bit of both? I mean, it's kind of a, it should be both, but it's like when it comes down to it, when in your experiences, who has kind of taken on the brunt of that?
It's gonna to your point, it's both. It's gonna come down to kind of who caught it or who did the due diligence, right? So we've seen it come up more often on the buy side that they thought they acquired something that they didn't. But what I also say is that is starting to create some very savvy buyers to go, ooh, we've been burned once. We don't want to make that mistake again. That's why I was saying this isn't something that historically has been brought up in due diligence, but it is starting to come up more and more because the buyers are saying, hold on, we need to know. I was talking to a company the other day and they were like, yeah, we just acquired the site, all these things. But then we just assumed they had a website. We Googled it. There was a website. So we thought that it worked. Turns out someone local in town had built the website to support this little diner and it wasn't owned by the company at all. So while a quick Google search showed a website existed, they now had to figure out, do we want to upset this local townie that built the site to generate business and tell them, please take it down? But we also don't want to put a new website up and compete, but the pricing is wrong. So we don't know how to fix this and we don't even know who built this. So we don't even know where to go. But we also weren't expecting to invest in a brand new website and spend thousands of dollars just to get this company or this diner back off the ground. So it's an unexpected expense that they weren't wanting to do right that moment. And so it starts to really negatively impact that deal, or how quickly can we acquire and get back up and running again without seeing any downtime. So typically it's that side. However, we are seeing more and more, especially in like the reps and warranty of, hey, we're going through all of this. It is found on the buying side, but they go back to the seller and say, you didn't provide us these things. And now you need to make it right. Well, the seller's long gone and spent the money. So now it's like, I don't have the funds to go do A, B, and C, right? And so it really then can come back on the buyer in a very, very negative way. And oftentimes we see it 6 months, a year down the road.
Wow,
And
that long.
so, and that's kind of one where our process is trying to implement this to go, we can have this done within a month. Why are we waiting 6 months to find that there's gaps? Why are we waiting so long for this integration of your digital infrastructure? And so that's a lot of what we're seeing. But like I said, that's why the money's long gone. 6 months later, you think you're not going to hear a word about this. And it then starts to become much more of a costly expense than you expected.
It's funny you say reps and warranty, and I was actually just talking with a gentleman about that today, and what that does for from the seller side, because obviously it's protection. It does have, you can go against the policy instead of, maybe that money you have in escrow over a certain period of time to handle things like these. And so it's something that, obviously as a business owner, and as M&A advisors, you're seeing it more and more where we're getting sell side reps and warranty programs or in plans in place. So you don't have to come out of pocket for that down the road when something, because, you know, a lot of times too, is it, well, was it on purpose? Did they purposefully not disclose that they don't own this? Or was it just, honest mistake? I didn't know. Have you seen, what is your typical sense of, is it more, I don't know, I don't see it, or people trying to hide it because they're like, I was kind of an idiot and I didn't do this and I don't want to look, have egg on my face kind of thing.
Initially, it's I had no idea. I mean, that's where I'm saying the self-made checklist is not ideal. We've seen it on both the buy side and the sell side, and when we compare it to ours, it's just like, no, this is not going to get you what you need for an integration process. It's just kind of a matter of when is it going to break, right? When you go that route. But We had an example of this where we were working with a client. We did the go to market strategy. We got them to exit. And then when buyer came on, they were like, hey, we're good. We don't need, your help. I've done this before. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, I'm here to answer any questions. Happy to help get anything transitioned over. We've already gone through a lot with them. And they're like, oh, no, we don't need you. So then I get a call 6 months later from the seller, freaking out, trying to figure out what's going on. Why is the site down? I can't get my, none of the email things are working. I don't know what it was to. I thought I transferred everything over. Genuinely thought she transferred everything over. I assumed everything got transferred because the buyer told me, hey, we don't need you. So then I'm like talking to the seller, though, also in my head going, why is this your responsibility? Like, they bought it. They should have asked you for all of these things. Why is it yours? Turns out they had given the logins to Squarespace for the website, not realizing an entirely separate Squarespace account was set up for the domain name. But because the domain name was gone, so were the emails to do any sort of password reset. And so now it's like, now we have to go and prove ownership. Well, we don't have half the things on file with Squarespace. We have to go through, hey, here's all the legal transaction. Here's this, here's that. Who's paying my bill to consult through this? Right. So to your point, she in that case admitted, like, I didn't know. And also, like, maybe it was my fault. And I think the seller ultimately ended up, or the buyer ultimately ended up paying the invoice, but it's not the kind of conversation you want to have. I definitely sat on that one going, all I can do is step in and help, but I don't know who's at the end of the day is responsible for this. But yeah, I mean, there should have been more due diligence on the buyer's side as well to make sure that data was in place. So, but I don't know why the seller called. It shouldn't have been their problem.
Well, yeah, they probably was that owner still in the business, it sounds like?
No, nope,
No,
long
they're
gone.
out. They're out, okay. Because I could
And we
see
see
if,
it
if
too often.
yeah.
They're gone, they step out, they're done. And especially smaller deals, no, they're not trying to stay on for a long time. That was the whole point of exiting. And so they don't remember. Sometimes they're like, I didn't remember setting that up. I don't even know who did it. I don't even know where to start at this point. So that's where we got to catch it early.
Yeah, and at what point in the process are you thinking, so if we're talking about, a sell side M&A advisor, you know, understanding, their clients' digital assets, like how does that conversation go in your opinion?
I think it comes into, hey, we have to really understand how the infrastructure is, but also our job to ask the right questions. I think everyone, is like, yeah, I know where everything's at. But for us, even, are you thinking about Slack? How is Slack set up? Who's responsible for managing, new employees coming and going? Who's responsible for your emails? I had a client the other day reach out and was like, hey, my credit card's about to expire. And I was like, you do have the logins to Google Workspace. You can update this, but no problem. Let me go in and do that for you. And I'm in there and I was like, you have like 12 to 13 emails in here. Are all of these still active? Like I'm pretty positive the size of your company or just what I know is not this many. And he's like, oh no, we don't need like half of those. I was like, that would drastically cut your bill in half with Google
Right.
Workspace if we cut that. But that means you've also probably been paying this at least 1 to 2 years. So, had we cut this and been more aware of these things, but they think, oh, IT's handling it, or oh, no, I don't know, someone else's has that. So, they always want to pass it on to somebody else, but no one's really coming in and doing that due diligence and going, are all of these things needed though? Or where can we cut these costs? So, it really is a conversation of we need to finally get that single source of truth. We need to finally have people taking ownership of this instead of IT's got that and a web developer somewhere's got that and I've never called a lawyer to have them review, ADA or my privacy policy. I just threw it up real quick. So we need to get these things under control.
This episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today. In your professional opinion, Is the business owner the right person to know all that stuff? I mean, we talk when we advise our clients, it's like, Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner, we need to show that you can be removed from the company, that it's not solely reliant on you. And I feel like, generally speaking, most business owners probably wouldn't know the ins and outs of their digital assets. They have people that would do that. That they have roles for people that do that. But when you're talking to clients, is it mostly the business owner who does or doesn't know?
Mostly the business owner does not know.
Yeah,
And that's the
correct.
biggest issue that we're seeing is you own the assets, you own the brand, you own the company, you should own all of these things. It doesn't matter who's responsible. That's what the standards of practice are for. That's what your policies are for, is to document how things are handled. But it is your responsibility as the owner to know. Again, because and the reason for that is we've had clients call us and go, "Hey, I just let this employee go. You need to change all the passwords immediately." That wasn't my job. My job was to build your website. My job was not to do anything related to marketing, to Slack, to QuickBooks, to Stripe, to any of these things. So I can't help you. I can only get the pieces that I'm actually aware of changed. But it's also not fun to go to every single vendor and say, we let an employee go and they're the ones who know this, but can you change Slack? Can you change, our CRM? Can you change our payment processor? Can you change the website, the hosting account, the emails, all of these things? And so if you don't have that checklist together as the owner, you are leaving yourself extremely exposed, whether you're getting ready to sell or not. But same thing as you get closer to selling, yeah, sometimes you have employees getting ready to jump ship because of the uncertainties or the route you're going to go with that. So as soon as they catch wind of it, how much are you now exposed, or how much did you just destroy that deal because that employee left? So while I do agree that it is important to delegate, while I do think that your team should be enabled, like empowered to do this, it is also equally important that you still keep the keys. And that's the piece that we see missing often.
Yeah, where they just rely on their team to know, and they're like, okay, I was washing my hands of it. I like they got it taken care of. I don't need to know about that. Well, that's not necessarily the best approach.
No, and that's like where, you'd asked at the beginning about my story. And it's like, that's the reason that this stuff makes more sense is because I've worn every single hat from graphic design to website, like actual development and server side to, our CRMs and setting up our processes. So I see that I know I need to ask this. I need to keep the reins of this. I need to at least know the right question so that should something happen, I can step back in. But ideally, I don't want to step in, to your point. How can the company run without me, but still know the right information of what I need to know should something happen?
So, what is your recommendation on making sure the key people know, but also the business owner knows? Is it documentation? Is it, delegation? Is it, meeting? Like, how do you, like, what do you, when you're talking to a client, like, how do you know the right people know about these digital assets?
For us, it's going to be our digital continuity system. So that's going to be where we document it all. We assign who's the right people to be able to make certain changes and who's in charge of what. What happens if you're like, hey, a credit card is no longer valid? We need to change that. I'm going to tell you, a business owner does not know where they need to go immediately to update that credit card. That's where we see a lot of assets get lost. You can tell me all day, hey, we've got a CRM and I have everything under control with it until the credit card expires. And, who is the one who gets those notifications? Is it an admin who's checking your emails? Is it you specifically? Is it, a partner who set it up for you? What does that look like? And are they paying attention? I just had a husband wife duo where I was like, your site's down, right? Like, we're trying to do maintenance and it's down. And they're like, no, I mean, my husband takes care of that. It should be fine. And he just said that it expired, in September. And I was like, well, we're in January right now. And so we might want to go figure that out. And sure enough, the husband let it lapse and got it back, thankfully. Like, he just didn't want to check the emails. Like, what happened? And so you're putting a lot in the hands of other people. So that's where the digital continuity system comes in. That starts to help with, hey, here's what we have in place. Here's who has access to it. Here's who and shouldn't, does and doesn't. And then from there, what happens if someone were to leave, whether it's a vendor, whether it's an employee, and what do we need to do should that happen to make sure you still have ownership during that transition to keep that continuity.
Right. And that's some of the things you advise your clients on is what to do in that transition, I'm assuming.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the core services we have is how do we, increase any sort of revenue and valuation that we can leading up to could probably be, a 3 to 5 years from exiting. And then it could also be that they engage us though 6 months to a year prior to just to say, all I really want to do, I don't really care about the valuation. That's whatever it is. This is where I'm at. And they come in and we start working through our digital asset protection and putting all of that together to say, here's everything you have. Here it's all documented. When you get to due diligence, you hand them a document and say, yep, I've got everything. Here's what you need. I can answer any question you have. And then post transaction, we can come in on the other side and say, let's start getting everything that you actually acquired and make sure that you do, in fact, have ownership of it now.
When you're looking at your ideal client, you mentioned a couple of time frames there. I guess two-part question. Why would one of these business owners want to work with you guys? And two, how far in advance of a sale, or how long of a runway do you need to make sure that they're covered to the level that you guys feel comfortable with?
Yeah. So we've worked on over 75 deals. So we definitely understand what are people looking at from this. We've seen the headaches. I get probably 5 calls a week on just disaster recovery for website situations, marketing situations, email, cease and desist letters, whatever that looks like. We get the phone calls. And so we've seen so much of it over the course of the last 16 years. But with that, it really depends on their goals. So if their goal is to increase valuation, then we should absolutely be talking to them 3 to 5 years out. We should be looking at how can we streamline and automate your systems and processes? How do we make the website work more of a tool for you, no longer a brochure? How can we change the marketing from a referral based company to an actual qualifying lead generation tool and sales process? So we start really looking at that. And that's where the variety of services that we offer, we can come in and say, I think this is going to be the one that has the best impact for you. Or I think we need to layer this, this, and this on, or bring this advisor in to hit those goals. Now we can get that valuation or that multiple that you're looking for. Or if they're coming in and, like I said, more of just kind of the, hey, I just need to be ready to go to market. That's where I'd probably say 6 months or so to really have a good foundation. We can complete our service faster, but at the end of the day, there's usually some headhunting for something. And so in that situation, it's probably going to take us a few months to really get after everything that we need to successfully go to through due diligence.
So you said, so just so I understand, you said 6 months prior to going to market. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So okay, okay. So if you're talking with your client and you identify that they don't know where their digital assets are or who owns them, you would ideally bring you in and your team in about 6 weeks or 6 months ish in advance of going to market. Now, what would you say to hey, is it worth the extra time? Let's say they want to go to market, we're preparing everything and, all that sort of stuff. And it's going to take 2 months, whatever, 3 months to get everything ready. How important is that extra couple of months for you to do your work while the M&A advisor is getting the deal ready? As opposed to, well, they want to sell now. We feel like now's the right time. I don't care that you need 6 months. You're only going to get two. Like, how important is that to have that right amount of time?
I think it's always important to have the right amount of time. I think a mistake a lot of business owners make is just jumping to, oh crap, we just have to. I don't want to. I'm tired. I'm burnt out. I can't keep doing this. Or we had a family medical emergency and I can't keep doing this at the same level. We need to get liquidate, if you will. So those certain situations do come up. I think any business owner should always be planning for that exit. They should always be looking at, because you can even look at it as planning for the exit, as you said. I might not want to exit for another 10 years, but at least the company is running for 5 without me. And so I could to, go do some other things while taking this revenue. And others are, hey, no, I know that I've done this for far long enough. I'm ready to start exiting. And in order to do that, I need the company running without me. But really at the end of the day, we've jumped in on all sorts of phases of it. We see, business brokers often want to just get it listed and go. And so in that case, no, we don't have a runway for it. So we just do the best that we can. And Our goal, though, with the whole piece of our ownership mapping framework, how do we just get them out of it? How do we collect everything we need in the first 1 to 2 phone calls? And then from there, my team steps in and we go do all of the hunting and gathering from there to really, because we know there's a lot going on in due diligence. And so the last thing we really want to do is throw yet one more thing on their plate to make it happen. So that's another reason where I usually feel that we can get that done a little bit quicker because our team is going to go and do so much of that for you.
Yeah, how are these business owners getting you guys? Is it them coming directly to you? Is it coming from an M&A advisor when they identify that we don't know anything about their digital assets? Like, how are people coming to you to start working with you guys?
Yeah, a lot of times it's going to be like exit planners that are going through a lot of that
Okay.
M&A advisors that are really looking at, hey, these are some things we should really get a grasp on before we go. Just, I think it adds a lot to their service offering and just their expertise as well. Like I've talked to so many of them and I'm like, it is not for you to go hunt all of this down. Like you should not know this. That is not your area of expertise and it changes regularly. What we were looking for a year, 2 years ago is different than what we're looking for today, just because of how quickly technology changes. So it's really more working and partnering with those M&A advisors to say, let us come in and assist you and at least get you, what you need to ask the right questions. But I do not think that they should be the ones trying to do this. And so then beyond there, it could be business planners, investment bankers, but a lot of those that are, hey, how do we really set you up for that success to get you there? We've seen EOS implementers using it too and coming to us from, hey, we need to be prepared for turnover. We do need to get you out of that main piece. So, how do we get these things lined up? So, that's a lot of it. Otherwise, just referrals and just our name and reputation of people calling us and finding us.
Yeah, we always say, to our clients, it's like you have a business to run still. So, focus on that. Let us run this process. And, I see you guys as being a part of that process and that deal team to make sure that these things are covered because everybody has, you're going to go to your accountant, and they're going to help you with the financials. And you've got your M&A attorney who's going to, help with all the legal work. And now why not, bring in you guys to work on those digital assets. And do you guys classify that as more like intellectual property kind of stuff? And I know we talked a little bit about it. It kind of flows into like a little bit of goodwill too, because your brand is your goodwill, and if your digital asset affecting your brand, like all that, and intellectual property and goodwill all affect value as well. So making sure that you understand how that affects that and the value of your business, I think, is important.
Yeah, it kind of goes into IP. I mean, I think a lot of people try to put it into the tech and the infrastructure of it all. I think that's one of the places that a lot of companies are doing it wrong, though, is assuming the IT company has it, the MSP has it, or they don't have one, just depending on size. But, when we've talked to so many MSPs, even, we're like, how often do you want to go look for Google Analytics logins? I don't even want to log in. I'm like, I know. And that's the problem is that a lot of business owners are lumping this into it's a tech thing, it's an IT thing. All of that should fall under IT due diligence. But when you really look at the nitty gritty, it is not even, I mean, IT providers will tell you that all day long. It is not what they're looking at. They might make sure you own the domain name because that's how the emails stay up, but that's about it. They're not looking at your brand. They're not looking at, you know, anything else past that, it seems. To your other point, everything has a dollar amount to it, and people just don't know what that looks like, right? And I think that's where it still makes valuation a little bit harder, other than what's someone willing to pay. But there is a price that goes into a domain name that's been around for 30, 40 years compared to a domain name that just got started using yesterday. There is stuff to be said about a Google business profile that has 1,000 reviews compared to one that has 10, to one that has a 3.2 star, rating compared to a 5. Like there's value in that. And that is something that you are looking at from a sell side too, or a buy side too, is how much more money am I going to have to invest to clean up or to get whatever's there? And that's why you're starting to see so many more deals come around the asset acquisition of, hey, I want to buy this because they've got X amount of Facebook followers. I want to buy this because they've got X amount of website traffic. It's now really working on that valuation to decide, do you see what this value really is?
It's interesting you say that, like, just the whole social media component to businesses now is, and just the way things are now is, yeah, those followers on, those subscribers on YouTube, those followers on, Facebook or Instagram or whatever. There are a lot of people out there who get paid a lot of money to be influencers, and that, whether it's personally or for your business, like that stuff can provide value for you and something that you just have to understand and be aware of. And I wonder, because when within our alliance, I don't hear a lot of discussion about digital assets related to like social media subscribers and things like that. Like obviously it's become more and more prevalent, but how often do you see that come up in the work that you do? I would imagine it gets more common as we go, but that's something I don't hear talked about a whole lot.
I think that's the piece. Like it's not talked about until it goes wrong. And we get every phone call for it going wrong. And it's really trying to help educate on the sell side too. Like there is value here. Don't sell yourself short. Like know what it is. But to your point, there's so many advisors that don't know what to tell them for the valuation or they're not even looking at it. So, it can impact deals. I know we had a laundromat do an acquisition and when they acquired the Google business, yeah, it was like 2.9 stars on the Google business profile. And I'm like, if you don't have a marketing plan in place, you're not ready to invest tons of money, which most laundromats don't invest a lot of money in marketing. They just hope they walk in the door and show up. Like you're already fighting a upward battle, right? And so it's also how does the buyer go to the table and go, I'm not paying that. I want less. So you also as a seller need to come from the other side and go, no, there's a lot more to it. We've worked really hard and own that this, and this have all been done. But if no one's talking about these digital assets, you're leaving money on the table. And so that's where we're really also trying to help advocate for there's more to it than the core assets that people are talking about. And there's more to it in the due diligence than just the finance tech and legal or the finance legal and like the tangibles.
Yeah, because you hear a lot of people talk about, getting the business owner out of the business, not relying on the business owner, customer concentration, processes in place, a good management team in place. And I would imagine digital assets are creeping up that list, every, pretty quickly here, and something that we all need to be aware of. And like I said, it could come, up to bite you, but it also could be a value to your client that maybe you want to consider, or not, have it in the past, but consider the value that these digital assets do provide your client, and maybe it increases the value, or it's something that is a synergy with the buyer, where now they can add on, a couple, tens of thousands of social media followers, and what that's going to do for their business. It's all just things that are more prevalent now than it was a couple years ago.
It's so much more prevalent. And like, it baffles me that it's still not more of the conversation for how much it comes up. But, yeah, if you've got a website and it's not doing anything for you, there's not a lot of value in that. But if you are looking for how do I find some of those quick wins, how do we automate even more of our processes? And to your point, automation wasn't something we could do a lot of 3 to 5 years ago. Today, there's so many ways you can create that automation. And so the more you can show that you've invested in those pieces, the buyer's going to want to eat that up because it's less work that they're going to have to do on the tail end. And so they're going to be more willing to pay a higher multiple for that. So, it's really making sure that some of those things are pieces of the conversation or where can we get some of those wins in a more quicker way.
And what I hear is I need to have all of you subscribe to my YouTube channel where this podcast is hosted to increase the value of the podcast, right? Like,
All
subscribe,
of it,
share,
everywhere.
comment. Yeah, Apple, Spotify, yeah, wherever. But even a podcast is a digital asset, and something that you got this community of people who follow it, and look forward to episodes and learn from it, like our conversation here today. And it's another great way that you not only can create some pretty cool content for you and your clients, but it is also a way to for your business to and I went into this podcast game thinking, like, I'm never going to host a podcast. Like, you're crazy. One, it's really fun. I get to meet great people like you, Paige, that maybe I would not have otherwise. But two, it's also creating content is creating value for your listeners and your followers and your clients, and it can be of value to your company.
Well, I mean, that's the pieces, people ask like, well, what size business is this, important for? And it's any business across the board. But as we kept diving into it, it was like, do you know how many entrepreneurs actually own 4 different entities, let's say? And like, to your point, you've got your business, but your podcast is a whole nother thing. You've got a different website for it. You've got a different, opt-in form for it. You've got a whole different marketing system for it, possibly different social media platforms for it. So you are now running 2. Try keeping track of one entity. And now you start building in all of you've got, coaching programs sometimes we see when we talk to podcast hosts. And it's like each of these have their whole own set of assets to it. And also, yes, if it wasn't an asset, you wouldn't be doing it. But
Right.
there's stuff behind it for you from some sort of monetary side. It's an asset, and we need to be paying attention to it and making sure we have that ownership.
And there are a lot of other things that are kind of like that same thing that you might not even consider. Paige, this has been amazing. To end our conversation here today, what are the top 2 or 3 pieces of advice you would give our listeners, the M&A advisor, when they're talking with their clients? Like, what are the things that we can do to kind of bring this to the forefront, make, raise awareness about it so it can be an asset and not a liability for our clients when they are going to, look to sell?
Start asking questions. I think asking, just like that, they're going to start hesitating right away. And as soon as they do, no, there's a bigger issue here than we really understand. I was on a call with someone the other day onboarding, and I was like, okay, well, we need to update that on the website. Do you have that? They're like, where would I find that? And I was like, you just acquired. And like, I understand that this is kind of new to you and whatnot, but like, we need to know these things, right? And if you don't know that, then I'm going to tell you there's a lot more that you just acquired that we don't know. But the same, I mean, but to that point, that was a new business owner. And so it can also be on the sell side that they just don't know. So ask the questions, do start to figure out how stuff is put together. But with that, don't try to do it yourself. There's literally no reason. There's no reason as an M&A advisor to think that you need to go out and figure out all of these assets and what to do. I think it's more saying there is an issue. Who do we need to go talk to make that happen? Because I think you guys are busy with all sorts of other things on your plate or trying to help guide them and, get the right CFO in there, get the right legal in there, whatever, right operations person. It's the same thing. Make sure you've got the right marketing team in there. And then understanding, do they understand the numbers and what they're doing and achieving and how they got there? If they're still completely referral based, we probably want to put together a marketing strategy before they go to market, and if they are still like, no, I've got people doing this and people doing that, and I don't know who's in charge of what, we probably need to get a grasp of that before they go to market so that you are doing your job of, let me get you the right team and, this deal team and get that all together.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a trend that's going to get, more prevalent as we continue to grow over the next couple of years on just digital assets and what they mean to a company's value. So we do have to pay attention to. We do have to make sure that we're not avoiding it, and we are helping our clients with managing those digital assets. And whether it's, definitely start the conversation on bringing someone like Paige and her team to help, with that, because I would imagine that we all say we make up our fees by just the value we provide the company. That it would definitely hold true in this case, because if you can avoid something catastrophic where you got to spend a lot of time, money to try to track stuff down after the fact, and where you could have done it ahead of time, definitely make sure that you guys are aware of that possibility. So, Paige, thank you so much for joining. This is an amazing conversation. Where can our listeners find more about you, Tree Ring Digital, and the great work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn at Paige Wiese. That's Wiese. And then you can also go to treeringdigital.com. And then, kind of to get started and get kicked off, if you're not sure where to start or what any of this means, we do have a free digital asset checklist that you can kind of just start the conversation. You can use that internally, but also as an M&A advisor, use that with your clients. Go in, it's at treeringdigital.com/mastermind, and just download it and just kind of go through it with them and say, do you know where these things are, what you're doing here, what does this look like? And when you start to identify those gaps, and it's a really good time to start getting somebody in.
Awesome. Amazing. Make sure to check out Paige's website and all the great services that provide and how they could help you advise your clients to make sure that that outcome is the best possible. Paige, thank you again for joining the show. That is our episode for today. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this episode. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us at all the podcast streaming platforms out there. And make sure to tune in every Thursday morning for a brand new episode. Until next time, everybody, take care. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.